and welcome back to the My Mama podcast. Yes, I'm back after a lovely summer break filled with late nights, lots of swimming and eating and drinking, and spending time with family and other loved ones. Speaking of family, this season of the My Mama podcast opens with one of my absolute favorite human beings, the first man I loved, the first man who showed me what love is, the man who raised me and taught me well, my dad. Growing up, I wasn't really aware of the challenges and difficulties that many girls had when it came to a relationship with their dad. I was literally oblivious to the fact that few would spend time with their fathers, and the fact that many of them despised their fathers, really didn't like them. Why? Well, because I was blessed, lucky to have a male figure in my home, in my life, who couldn't care less about stereotypes and who did what within a household. Once we moved to Cyprus, when I was almost 10 years old, I knew my dad was different to other dads. I would rarely see other dads picking their kids up from school or dropping them off, or washing the dishes, or sitting around listening to records together and sharing notes on music and soundtracks and books. My dad was different. And when you're young and, an impressionable teenager, you kind of already stick out like a sore thumb. And because we just moved here from a foreign country and I didn't really know the language and the social norms, I would do anything to minimize that sticking out like a sore thumb part. I just didn't want to be different. I wouldn't even speak English in an English accent. Like when my parents would speak to me in English when friends were around, I would want to die of embarrassment. I mean, I just did not want my family to be different. My mum was the breadwinner and the boss of the house. Needless to say, I grew out of that and thankfully came to the realization that I am a very, very lucky girl. So I didn't invite my dad on the podcast just because he's my dad and I think he's simply amazing. I invited him on because he has an interesting story to tell. Unlike most people, again, my age, whose parents have incredible stories of the war and struggles in Cyprus, I have none of that. My dad was born and raised in the UK to Greek Cypriot parents who held some secrets that my dad would later on discover and ones that he talks about today during our chat. So during our chat, which was basically just me sitting in awe of my dad and listening to all that he's ever been through. So during this chat, we move between stories of his mother, his love for the theatre, finding his place in London's society during the 50s, 60s and 70s, meeting my mum, my childhood, moving to Cyprus and having 6 kids. He is a remarkable man and it is an absolute privilege to be his daughter. Now, here's my daddy.
I used to watch that, listen to it.
What's Piccolo? Is that like Top Hip-Hop?
It was on radio only with Alan Freeman, and every Sunday I used to put the recorder on at 6 o'clock and record for an hour all the top 20s.
Record how? On what?
Reel-to-reel tape recorder.
See, we think we're old-fashioned when we use the little cassettes. I showed the boys VHS cassettes the other day. And they were like, oh my God, how does it work?
Betamax?
They wouldn't know the difference. I think I showed Georgia, but I don't have a Betamax. But yeah, But the just looking at it, it was like they were looking at I don't know, like a spaceship or something. It was like very weird. And then we were going through DVDs, and I put a DVD on for them, and they were like, when is it going to start? When is it going to start? You know, where it has that warning in the beginning, and then you wait for the menu to come up and then press play movie. And it was just fascinating for them. But I did ask Giorgio, I said, does all this look and sound old to you? And he goes, yeah. And I thought, well, that's exactly how we viewed the 60s and the 70s, well, my generation, the 80s.
Well, I've got plenty of Betamax tapes. Got a Betamax machine. I've got a VHS machine.
Do they still work?
I'm not sure. I'm frightened to try. Because we've got lots of memories in there.
Does
your christening and all that.
Is that on Betamax? But I thought you transferred it.
I might have put it into VHS, which again may not be good. But I gave it to you, didn't I?
I think I've got that somewhere. Yeah, I think I do.
And one evening we've got to have a family evening where everybody sits around and watches their yaya, my mum and dad, mum's mum and dad.
Yeah, we need to do that. And okay. I'm going to try and switch to professional mode here. I'm not going to be very good at it. But yeah, the reason why you're invited on the podcast is not because just because you're my dad. Especially because you're my dad, but because you have an interesting backstory. Our family has a very interesting backstory. And every few months I feel that we go over it and over it, the whole, your mum was adopted, we never knew where she came from, who the family was. But also the fact that you grew up in London, you were born in 1948, sorry. So you've lived through decades of massive change and being in London and, of course, you know, having a completely different job there and then moving to Cyprus and doing something different. So that's what I want to get into today. But let's start on something... All right, interesting. Emilia, my sister, for those who don't know, sent in a few questions. You don't know the questions that she sent in.
Absolutely not.
So I'm going to go through those as well. But let's start from the very beginning. Earliest memory. What is the earliest memory that you have? At what age was that?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Possibly going to Seasides with mum and dad.
Seasides, Brighton?
South End or Brighton, yes. Probably more positively coming to Cyprus in 1955. 3 months journey, travelling through Europe by train, landing at a place called Brindisi, which was known for being a dirty place by everybody. Coming across the seas with the ship, I can't remember the name of it now, and going through Isles de Medios, seeing everything sort of like Scotty's men are covered up in dust, because at that time it was the uprising of the Oka.
Yeah, 55, 58.
So there were many restricted places that you couldn't go to.
Did Yaya know? Bapu know? Why did you choose to come in 55? Just happened?
I have no idea, because my dad came to Cyprus in 1934 from his village in Lissos. And as far as I know, my mother with her daughter came to Cyprus in 1938. So I presume their first venture back to Cyprus was that time in 1955.
So that's almost like close to 20 years later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you just mentioned your mum and her daughter.
Yeah.
So let's talk...
But at that time, she was my sister. I didn't know it was...
Okay, right. It gets juicy, guys. So Yaya, your mum, I already mentioned that she was adopted. When did you find out that she was adopted, and why was she adopted?
Her father, we presume it was her father, was the Dimach, or the mayor of Gadobafos. he built a restaurant there as well called the Pelican Inn, which still stands today, but in different hands.
Okay.
Her mother, in inverted commas, was Sophia. She may have been her mother. She may have been his wife. She may have been his girlfriend. I don't know.
Okay.
But Lalla, or Cristalla, my sister, was born in 1934. So at the time they supposedly left Cyprus, she was an infant. But I don't know. I've no records of
So
how...
Okay. So who was Lala's dad, aka Yaya's first husband?
We're fairly sure that it was Δήμαρχος Christos Adaliotis. That was his name.
Okay.
We're 99% sure that he was the father. I've heard it rumoured around...
wait a minute. Yaya's father or Lala's father?
Yaya's father,
Yaya's father.
Right.
Okay, who was Lala's stepfather?
Lala's father's a guy called George Yaluri.
And why did Yaya divorce him? Whose is that? Is that yours? Okay.
Yeah, we presume so. I mean, I've not seen any paperwork or anything like that, apart from my birth certificate that said Aspasia...
My Yaya's name.
Yeah, Yaluri, divorced.
Okay.
And now going to be Antonio.
So on your birth certificate was that Yaya was divorced?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So do you know why she divorced him?
I heard again through many people, long gone now, that he abused my mother, even from my own father. He said, again, I'm not sure how this all works, but I was told that he was a policeman in Lissos, which is my dad's village. So presumably my dad
knew him,
or other people knew of him and maybe gave him information on my mother. I don't know.
Okay. But she was a woman who divorced or broke up or left her husband in the 30s.
Yeah.
In Cyprus.
Yeah. Maybe 34 isn't correct, but that's the only information I have.
Yeah.
Because if Lalla was born, call her Lalla because that's her name, Cristalla. Lalla was born in 34, so theoretically it isn't possible for her to be travelling with a child less than a year old, but it's possible.
Yeah. Do you know when she met Bapu, your dad?
Not for sure, but I've seen photographs in the mid-40s where they were together.
Okay.
But legally they got together sometime in late 1947.
So that was after they moved to England?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
As I said, my dad came in 38. Let's say my mother came sometime later, 34, 35, 36, I don't know, 38.
Okay. Do you know why they moved to England?
Like everybody, for a better future, I presume. My dad, as far as I know, was always in the hotel come restaurant business. So when he came over, he came and worked with some friends that he knew from Bafos and eventually opened up his own restaurant many years later.
Wow. And also the age gap between you and Lala?
14 years.
14 years. So how old was she when she had Lala, Yaya? Yaya?
23.
23, and then she had
Hang
you...
on, 21, sorry, 21.
21, which was about right for those times, but then she had you much later on.
Yeah.
Were you an accident?
Possibly because from what I gather from the birth certificate and the marriage certificate of those two, I was conceived out of wedlock.
Out of wedlock. Oh!
I'm a naughty boy.
Oh, God. You know, it's
Music to your ears, I know.
It's... No, you know what? I mean, obviously, Yaya had her issues. We don't know where they came from. It could be from multiple sources. It could be the fact that she was, she grew up without a mum and dad as you and I understand.
Can I just add a little bit to that, by the way? When she was born, or in her childhood days, we found out later on that she was taken to a village called Nada in Bafos and was raised with other girls. Now, whether those girls were her sisters, whether they were under a mother and my mother was taken there, which is what they did many, many times in those days. They didn't really legal adopt people. They just took them on to help them become ladies or whatever. Well, so I don't know where all that went.
So when it comes down to facts, we actually don't know who Yaya's mother was, who her father was, if she had any siblings. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I'd say it's pretty sure that Christos Adaliotis was her father.
No.
That's the only relatively sure thing.
Yeah. Okay. And so, but then, when did you become aware of Yaya's previous relationship with her husband? And when did you become aware of the fact that Lala was a half sibling?
Lala got involved with a married man.
Okay. Yay, Lala.
She was a very successful violinist. She went to a very good school, got extremely good grades. She was taken on at a school called the Mary Datchler School, which is somewhere in Camberwell. Somehow or another, she got into violin. She was extremely good. She went up to Liverpool and worked in the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. Was very, very good there. She also worked at Sadler's Wells Orchestra. She was about the only foreign person as a violinist certainly in London, maybe even the whole of England, I don't know.
Wow. You mean with a foreign name?
With a foreign name, Yaluri, because that's her official name, Kristalla Yaluri.
Yeah, and this aunt of mine, who is the only half sibling on my dad's side, the only sibling that he has, really lives in Portugal.
Yes, correct.
Yes, okay. And I have cousins in Portugal. And my kids have cousins in Portugal.
That's correct.
Yes.
So she got involved with this guy called Walter. Walter was a married man at the time. He had 2 sons. And Lala, probably for love of understanding of music and all that, got involved with him. And she had a son called Alexander. Alexander last month was 60 years old. He lives not with his mother, he lives in Portugal as well. He's married with 2 boys. My sister, by the way, is now 19 years old. Totally comprehensive in everything that she does and
it's amazing.
So what was happening during those years that she was going off and doing her thing was that I used to visit her quite regularly up in North London. Can't remember the place now. Philip Lane in North London, where she lived with Walter. And I used to go and talk to her about my problems with my mum, how difficult life was sometimes, seeing how other people lived more liberally, and I was restricted in most things that I wanted to do. So one day we were talking, and I must have been in a particularly low mood, and it came out that she wasn't my real sister.
Oh my God.
I was 22 years old.
Do you remember how you felt?
Well, shocked, obviously. And mouth hanging open, probably all the way home as well, until I got to my mum's. And I didn't say a word to her for many, many days, weeks, maybe even months, until one day there was a terrific row and I let loose. And neither I nor my sister were very popular.
After that.
There were many bad words thrown around. But yeah, that's the time I found out that she was my half-sister. Not that it made any difference to me whatsoever, because I always loved Lala, and I still do.
Yeah.
She does with me. She calls me her little monkey.
Mon amour. We love Lala.
She raised me. For 14 years, she did most of the raising. I don't remember, though.
But you were also raised by other people, you said, as well, because Yaya and Bapu used to work.
Yeah.
What did Yaya used to do? What was her job?
She was a seamstress.
Same as my other Yaya.
Yeah, she was very good. She used to work in London somewhere, as far as I know. My dad, as I said, worked in the restaurant, so their hours were pretty tied up. All I can remember is coming home to an always empty flat, because we had a flat above these other ladies in Albert Square. Not the Albert Square that people know in England. This was another Albert Square, where incidentally Roger Moore lived.
Yeah.
James Bond.
Yes. Hence, one of the reasons why one of my sons is called James. There's a special emotional connection there. Yeah.
Anyway, I used to come home to this place, and most times it would be locked upstairs. There was like a door between us and the ground floor. And on the ground floor lived a lady called Florence Davis. Now, Auntie Florrie, as I called her, was also, in inverted commas, my godmother. Now, when I say my godmother, when I was christened in Hagia Sophia in Bayswater, which was the Greek church in London at the time, there were only two churches, that one and another one, which was for Cypriots. Hagia Sophia was the nicey church. And my dada, George Fogel, who was from Xilodimbo, he was a friend of my parents, and he christened me. But my Auntie Florrie downstairs, because she knew me from birth, wanted also to be my godmother. And so what my mother did was agree for her to be at the christening, and that she could touch me as you do when you're christening. And from there on, she became my godmother, Auntie Florrie.
Wow.
And whenever she used to send me cards, breakfast card, Christmas cards, birthday, it was always Florrie, godmother.
Was she a much older woman? Or
Very much older, very much older. And her sister Ethel, Auntie Ethel, she lived in another house next door. Now, these houses were very big and grand houses.
Okay.
And there were lots of elderly people around. I mean, to me, maybe an elderly might have been 40.
Yeah, it's
but
true.
I would think she was probably a lot more than that.
Okay. So while Yaya and Bapu were working, you were in a flat more or less on your own, unless you were with...
With them, they used to quite often give me dinner until Mum and Dad came home, or tea or something like that. I'd sit with them watching TV. I remember very clearly to today, 1963, when John Kennedy was killed. I came home from school and my Auntie Flora was screaming out. She said, Andrew. I said, what's happened, Auntie? She said, they killed John Kennedy. And we sat down for hours together watching what was going on and everything, and these little old black and white TVs. So I was raised very much by a lot of the elderly people.
Yeah. Were you aware of American culture then back then in London, in England?
No, absolutely not.
No?
No, nothing at all. Nor about wars. My dad used to say they were down in Stockwell Station, underground station, while bombs were flying over the top, because my dad couldn't go into the army because he had a problem with his stomach and he was exonerated from going into the army.
Okay.
But they did camp out in Stockwell Station, underground station, until the bombing was over. So they were there in London. Lalla had been taken out to the country, I can't remember where she was again adopted, not legally, by people out there until the war was over, and then she came back to her mother.
Wow. Phew. And I always remember that one of the reasons why you would always say that you wanted a big family and you wanted life around was because you went through those dark, lonely times growing up yourself.
I always said in later years, when I had you and all your brothers and sisters,
all of us, there's 6 of us.
And when I used to go out and work, people used to say to me, do you have a family, Mr. Andreas? I said, yes. I said, I've got 6 children, 3 from England, 3 from here. And they said, oh, you remarried? I said, no, they're all mine. I just started all over again when I came to Cyprus. And I said, the nice thing now, when I come home, that I can always hear something scratching in the house.
Yeah, there's always someone there.
Whereas when I was in England, I came home, it was deathly silence. There was not a sound to be heard, apart from my aunties downstairs, who used to look after me for those few hours.
Wow.
So to me, having company was very, very important.
Yeah. Well, you've got tons of that now, don't you?
Thank you very much, all of you.
Yes. So, okay, I want to move on to the part where you used to be an actor, a theatre actor. How did that come about?
I was 17 when I left school in 1965. I don't know what it was. Somehow or another, I managed to find out there was a drama school going on nowhere near my school, where my school was, but somehow I found out about this drama school. And I just ventured down there one evening, met up with the teacher, who was Jean Juff, tiny little lady, very, very theatrical. And she said, well, come down, Andrew, and try it out. Because I was Andrew in England. Yeah. Come and try it out. So I said, okay. So I went down there the next time they had a meeting, which was, I don't know, was it once, twice a week? I can't remember. And we used to do these little things just to get into the way that actors do, which I didn't know at the time. Like, you might sing something, you might read something, you might sit down and just discuss things. And one of the things I always remember is when we were sitting down and they'd say, right, let's talk about so-and-so. And one of the things I always used to do the moment we did that was to scratch my chin. And she would say, Andrew, you're scratching your chin. Oh. They talked about something else. I go there. And they did it so many times, in the end, I stopped scratching my chin every time I thought about things. Anyway, from there on, they then decided they had been doing productions before my time. And one of the first productions they did was Noah.
Okay.
About the story of Noah with his sons and his wife and everything else. And they decided they wanted to give me the role of, what was his name? Gosh, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he was the youngest son.
Okay.
And I had to wear a little swim trunk type thing and a thing like Tarzan along the top. I can't remember his name now, the son. Anyway, and we did this production. I, at the time, had just started, well, I hadn't started, I'd been doing, not bodybuilding, but looking after myself like a bodybuilder, using springs and things like that. I've been doing that since I was about 13, so I'm now like 4 or 5 years down the line. And I was on stage doing my part, went off, I had to come back in. As I walked back in, somebody blurted out, oh, look, here comes Tarzan. And I lost my words completely.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
So that was my first thing. Then we did a few more productions. We did The Sport of My Mad Mother. We did something to do with the Eton boating song, something, where I was a butler. With a moustache and all that. We did several of these things, and I enjoyed it.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, and I thought I was going to go into big things, because at the time I was reading a lot of books, especially Ian Fleming, and I thought maybe one day they'll invite me
to be a James Bond.
So I went off to a modelling agency, and they took lots of photos of me, which they said they were going to send around to other agencies, but never heard anything more.
Never panned out.
Never panned out.
What did Yaya think of your theatre?
She had no idea.
Ah, really? You didn't tell her? So where did
I might have told her, but there was no interest.
Oh, there was no interest.
No.
Oh, so it's not like it was something that she was dead against. It's just something that she didn't...
A bit loud, it's stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you wasting your time? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you were a teenager in the 60s, or late teenager.
I left school in 65, as I said. I had 3 jobs within 3 months. I went to Unilever in the first month, because in the meantime I'd applied for another job. And I thought, if I don't get that, I'll take this job. I left that after a month. It was really bad. I then went to Lambeth Authority, the local council, which was down the road from us, for a month. And then I was accepted to the job I wanted, which was the Ministry of Defence.
Wow.
In the Naval Department, and I was responsible later on for obtaining passports for all the admirals and the captains and the lieutenants in the army.
Wow.
And later on I moved on to it wasn't bigger things, but a better department where we knew all the movements of every single ship in the British Navy. It was top secret. I was not allowed to say anything to anybody about it. And I was there for nearly 5 years.
Did you enjoy it? So it was an office job?
It was an office job. It was enjoyable until it got to the part where you were no longer working every single day. You were working to produce things once a month, like reports. For 3 weeks of that month, you sat around doing nothing. And I used to have a book in my desk. I used to open a book and just read this book all day long, all these books. And it got to the stage one day and I spoke to my HEO, Higher Executive Officer, and said, look, I need to work. I can't just sit around not doing anything, just waiting once a month. He said, well, you should be grateful, Andrew. It's such a nice job. You don't have to do anything. You can sit here and, just read your book. I said, but I want to work. I can't just wait for a month. Anyway, eventually I decided to leave. I left. Now, somewhere around here, I get a little bit mixed up because I was also a ladies' hairdresser somewhere in the middle of my life.
Of course you are.
So I left, and I think I went to Hawker Siddeley Aviation. I left there after a year or two and went to Slazenger's, the sports people. Somewhere in there, I did the ladies' hairdressing for 2 years. And then I went back, Now, in the between time, I went to Waits, which was a building company, property company, where I was just a clerk at the beginning. And then later on, when I returned to Waits, they took me on in their property department, which was responsible for rents of all over England. And then they made me their property accountant, and I sort of rose to giddy heights there.
Yeah.
Until I got married in 79, where I worked a little bit more. Then I moved on to somewhere else after that.
Oh, so you were somewhere else when I was born in 81.
Where were you? In 81, I was working for Dun & Bradstreet. I then became a salesman for the services of Dun & Bradstreet, which was a debt collecting company. And I worked the area of London where I became a super salesman and won a competition that period. It was only a period of about 9 months. And I won the very first video recorder that anybody ever had, I think. And from then on, I was then promoted again and made the salesman of the whole of the south of England. But I didn't like that because then they gave me responsibility being responsible for other people's, and I didn't want to be responsible for other people's. I wanted to be myself and do my own job. Yeah. So eventually I left there. But that's another story.
I think that's the part where I take after you a bit. It's like, I just want to be the boss of me, be responsible for me. Don't think I'm made to be responsible for a team of people.
Absolutely.
I don't want the responsibility, basically.
The buck stops here.
Yes, exactly. Gonna think now. So you met Mum in 79?
1st of July, 79.
1st of July, 79. And that you met her, you weren't both out clubbing or anything, and you met?
No, we were introduced by people who supposedly knew us, knew me and knew her. But really, in all reality, all they knew was our parents. They had no idea who we were. Okay. And we visited one Sunday to Mara, my wife's parents.
And when you say we, do you mean Yaya, Bapu and you?
My mum and dad,
You went?
Yeah.
Okay. So where was Mum living at the time?
She was living near Chew in Plumstead.
Okay.
And we visited, and it was very nice. I liked the lady. She looked very pleasant, like my wife to be. And
my mum was gorgeous.
Still is.
Still is, yeah.
Still is.
Okay, still
and
is.
That was that. And we came out with the lady who introduced us. And because I knew the way my mother's mind was, there's other things going there. We came out and the lady said, what did you think of the girl? And I said, very nice. And I said, come round here a bit. So we went behind one of the cars there and we got down low. And I said to her, listen, and I just said some things to her that I'm very interested in the girl, but ring me personally. Don't ring my mother. Don't say anything to my mother. Just tell me what they think about me on the other side and we'll talk again. So the woman just accepted and that was it. And the next thing I heard is that we were going to meet for a second time and the rest, as I say, is history.
Wow. Okay.
We were engaged by the 18th of August of that year and married on the 24th of November that year.
79.
79.
So what? Few months after
you came along 2 years later.
I came. Yeah. So you
No
got
naughties.
no naughties, no naughties, and I was a love child. I was wanted. You wanted me.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. Lenny, whatever you say. What? Oh, I'm just gonna move into parenting. What was my birth like, or what did you feel when you became a father?
Well,
Was it what you were expecting? Did you feel this massive responsibility? Were you thinking about how you grew up with the parents you grew up, that maybe you didn't want to make the same mistakes that they made? Were these thoughts that were happening in your...
Well, first and foremost, I was present every single birth. All 6 children.
The last 2 kids are twins, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know. I just took it as if it was nothing unusual. I just blended into married life. I blended into fatherhood. I blended into being an assistant nurse there at Elena, your birth. I enjoyed the whole package. You were a handful, though. You were very difficult to sleep at nights. You were always crying.
Are you going to tell on me now how I was as a child? I was. Do you want to tell the story with my little bicycle?
Yes, in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, scooting around the corridors of our house.
Because I didn't want to sleep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've since then changed a lot in my old age. So my whole life revolves around sleeping now. Anyway, was Mum working at the time she had me? Were you working?
Yes. I was at Dun& Bradstreet. Mum was at Shirley High School.
My mum's a teacher.
Yeah.
So how did you work around childcare?
Well, the first few months, obviously, Mum was at home with you. After that, we found a really nice... No, you went to Auntie Pam first. Because you were brought up with... Ellie, our friend's daughter. She looked after you for the first few months. Then we had another very good friend of ours, Teresa Callahan. She then took on from there. And for the first year or two, you were with Teresa. You grew up very, very quickly and you went off to nursery, extremely young age. You were a very independent young lady.
Was I?
Mm.
So when
you were walking at a silly age, like 5 months.
I think it was 9 months.
No, you were clambering up onto the drinks trolley. I've got you on video somewhere. At 5 months old, standing there, and you were doing your first steps.
I had places to go and things to do.
We came to Cyprus in the June, July of '82, and you were walking up and down stairs in the villages.
Wow, and so I wasn't even a year old then,
No.
and that was my first time in Cyprus.
Yeah.
In the lovely villages. Did we go to Paphos or did we?
Yeah, went to Bath as well, but we lived in Oromithia at the time.
Okay. And then 2 years later, Emilia came.
17 months.
17 months.
Yeah.
My sister came along.
Yeah.
And then how long after did...
And then 5-year gap to Andoni, the first son.
The first son.
In the meantime, we changed houses several times and done different things.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that. Why did we keep moving houses?
Well, I was very practical, and the first house I bought was before your mum came along, so she had no idea I had a house. In the meantime, I'd been pulling down walls and starting to do central heating, rewiring the house, replumbing the house. Mum came along, she helped me complete that part. And when we got married, I carried on repairing the house, renovating it, until we got to the stage when Mum said, "You'd like a garage, wouldn't you, for your car?" I said, "Of course I would." "Well, let's start looking around." So Mum started talking me around to getting another house. So we put the house up on the market, got a very good price for it, bought our second house. Melia was born right between those two gaps. After that, while we were at the second house, Mum's cousin had opened up an old people's home in the next village in London, in Surrey to us. And we had to do some babysitting for the old people for a month, I think it was. And I got the hankering for doing old people sitting, and Mum did as well. So she gave up doing her teaching. We spoke to the bank. They gave us the funds to start an old people's home. They wanted to give us all the money, and we said no. We would sell the second house and put it directly into the third house, which was the old people's home, which we had to convert. And we converted it with your uncle Achilles. We sat there and started converting room by room by room. These were big old Edwardian houses in Croydon. And we did that for the next 10 years, really. But in between time, we bought another house from the proceeds of our old people's home. Andoni was getting older. We couldn't keep the 3 children in the old people's home, so we had to buy the 4th house to be able to live in, which we never did live in. So we sold it before anybody lived in it and went to our 5th house and started employing more staff to run the old people's home. Mum then got because she's the one who always gets the little itching feeling, she wanted a bigger home for old people. I wasn't very keen on it. And then our accountant at the time said, if you really want to make that move, you need to do it now or you're going to get involved with capital gains tax. So we thought we'd go to Cyprus for a few months to see how we'd get on. Going for a few months, we're still here. So
we weren't supposed to move here? Is that what you're telling me right now?
35 years later, from 89 to now.
Wow. Okay. So,
and in between time, we sold the old people's home. Our house then got sold as well, and we built our home in Dali.
Yeah. So my memories growing up were amongst, bricks and rolls of wallpaper.
Something like that, yeah.
It was something like that. And when you live in a society like Cyprus where everyone knows their maiden home and their father's home and their grandfather's home, for us it was always very strange because we were like, I don't even remember the house that I was born into. We moved to Cyprus and the gap between the way that we were raised, me, Emilia and Andoni specifically, the first 3 kids, was massively different to the way that our peers had grown up in Cyprus. I felt that there was a gap between my experience and theirs. Did you feel that there was a gap between your experience and Cypriot's experience here in Cyprus when you moved here? Because you were like 40 when you moved.
41, yeah.
41, so like my age now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because, like your mum, I was born and brought up in a very Cypriot life, even though we lived in London. Again, I just seemed to adapt. Maybe because I wanted it so much, I adapted very, very well. The only thing I didn't want for Cyprus, for me personally, was to be in the army.
I remember that.
And snakes. There were 2 things that I had this phobia with.
And you got out of the army and you
didn't enter because my dad at the time was still alive. He was disabled. So I came over with 5 descendants, which automatically means you don't go into the army.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So that was out.
In the meantime, Yaya, your mum, had died in?
She died in 88 before
we moved.
Because my mum and dad had come to Cyprus to emigrate in 83, but my dad at that time was disabled because he had a stroke. So up until 88, they were there. I had a phone call that my mum wasn't well. I came over, which was at the time of my 40th birthday. And I came over here, saw them in a clinic. They're both very, very, very unwell. Unfortunately, she died a few days later after I arrived. My dad was still in the clinic, so I took him out of the clinic and brought him back with me to England, where he lived until middle of 89, another 15, 18 months later, when he came back with us to Cyprus when we emigrated. And he, again, sadly died in 91. So he exceeded my mother by 3 years.
Yeah.
Her in 88 and him in 91.
91. So I was 10, I remember, when Bapu died.
And we'd started building the house in by that time.
Yeah. We moved to Cyprus. You've got 3 kids. We're living in a different area to where we're living now because we were waiting for the house to to finish being built. And in the meantime, you had 3 more kids.
No, the house was built. We'd moved in July 92. And in September 93, the 4th child came along, Panayoti, the 4th child, the second son. And then again, 17 months later, like you with Emilia, the twins came along in the April of 95.
Emilia's question. Do you regret leaving England?
No.
Do you regret changing jobs? Because this is the other thing that I was going to say. Thank you, Emilia, for reminding me with this question. That when you moved to Cyprus...
I'd forgotten that as well. I'd forgotten there was changing.
So did you have like a midlife crisis, do you think? Because you went from being in an office job, being in London, to moving to this little village in Cyprus and deciding to become a handyman, a plumber?
In London, I was, as I said before, I was the salesman in Dun& Bradstreet. I gave that up to go and work with Mum at the Old People's Home. I worked that with her for 3-4 years. We came to the question of Cyprus. So I'd already broken off from the office type jobs and become more independent, gone again into more building, more renovating of our house, having more time to do it.
And also spending a lot of time with us as well. I remember you being home a lot with me and Emilia.
Yeah, always been around you children. And we came to Cyprus, and my thoughts really were, I'd like to buy a nice piece of land where I can have my children build around me sometime in the future, because there was only 3 of you at the time. And we spent months and months touring all the areas that we could think of that we wanted to live with incorrect information from people as to how you could build and where you could build. And finally, we found what we wanted. And then having found the land that I wanted, even though the house was being built by builders, I couldn't really do much other than just keep an eye on it and be visiting every day as I did. I did take part in some of the building at the end of the day, finish off verandas and things like that. It then all finished, and I thought I could then adapt to maybe some sort of farming type thing, gardening maybe. And I just realised that gardening wasn't for me. I didn't have the so-called green fingers. And one day I was in the local grocers, and the mayor of the village, the Mukhtar, whatever he was, had heard that I could do lots of different things. And he asked me if I would help at the local schools to repair some pieces. And I said, yeah, fine. So they got me repairing some windows, some desks, some toilets. I did all that very successfully. So the school up the road, he said, it's got the same problem. You can do that for me as well. So I said, sure. I was being paid for this by the council. And I'd got my hankering again for doing the jobs I used to do. Coincidentally, that summer, that during the year that I was working, helping out with the schools, I went to Bladres with a friend of mine, a gumbaro of mine, and he introduced me to a guy who had a very big and successful business in Nicosia, a guy called Kostas Nikolaidis. And Gogi, my friend, he introduced me to him. And when he heard what I could do, he said, when you come back from the holiday, come and find me. And a few weeks later, I went to his shop and saw him. And he gave me a whole load of things to do, things I'd never done in my life before, like putting in a pressure pump and repairing this, that, and the other. And he gave me advice and showed me how to do certain things. And for about the next 15 years, I think it was, I just took off. I did full-time DIY, plumbing, especially shower doors. Shower doors were pouring off my back like nobody's business. Everybody was after me to do these jobs for them. And the one thing I did very successfully was always look after people. I used to do appointments with them and tell them I would be there at a certain time on a certain day, and I would always uphold that. If I knew I was going to be late, I couldn't do it, I used to ring them and say, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to be half an hour late, I can't do today. People even used to ring me up on the same day, and I said, I'll see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I'd go there at 2 o'clock, knock on the door, yes, I'm under... Wait, why? Well,
you're on time.
Yeah,
you should be 10 minutes late.
Yeah, they were stuttering. They couldn't believe I turned up. I said, well, you are? Yes, please. And once I got there, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do the other? And I used to do all these things for them. So I did that for all those years. Wow. Very happily, very successfully.
And you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because Emilia says here in her message, does he regret changing jobs? Because you could have been a very wealthy man. But it seems like you had a taste of wealth, of success, and it didn't really matter to you all that much a bit down the line.
It's very nice, but like I've always said to people, you're going to spend at least a third of your life working. Do it so you're happy. Money doesn't come into it. It's more important that you can get on and do those things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Rather than suffer. Towards the end of my office life, I used to go into work at 9 o'clock in the morning. 15 minutes later, I'd start looking at my clock and wondering where Friday was at 5:30.
Oh, wow. See, that's a
Once
clear,
it gets there, that is the
indication
end.
That you're not where you should be. Another question that Emilia has is, if you could change one thing in your life, what would that be? It's a difficult one. Would you change anything?
I don't think so. Maybe I said to Mum many, many times, if we could have met years beforehand, both of us had a longer life together.
Aww.
It's not enough 45 so far.
Not enough, huh?
No.
Okay. Well, the other question that she has here is any advice for a long and loving marriage? Because the funny thing is that we often say that you were introduced, it was the proxenia that they used to do. But, you know, touch wood, I mean, not that you're going to break up, but it worked in your case.
Yeah, but I was engaged twice before.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that. It's another little bit of history that
Which didn't work.
Which didn't work.
No, nothing. Lovely girls and all that, but it just didn't work.
Was that
only for a few weeks, few months, that was all. Nothing.
Yeah. And did you know that it wasn't... Were you the one who broke it off?
Yes, both times. I can't go into reasons now, but yeah. I was devastated by it because the first one I was like 24, 25, lovely age, perfect to start a life then. And it just didn't work. And the second one again was just... There was lies in between. It wasn't.
And were they Greek Cypriots?
Oh yes,
both of them. Of course they were.
I had a single life where I went out with English girls and things like that. But my aim in life was always to be, hopefully in Cyprus and definitely with a Greek Cypriot girl.
I think that's a very common mentality for people in the diaspora with many cultures. It's not just ours, especially back then. So, did you feel that it was pressure from the family, or you were the one who wanted that?
I just knew it was the right thing to do. You know, it was lovely having a great time being out and about with the girls, this, that, and the other. But to seriously settle down, it had to be with the right person.
If you could have one day with someone who has died, who would it be?
Probably with my dad again.
Dad?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say to ask her more information.
She was a very difficult, strange person. I mean, I love her because she's my mother, but it was hell.
She was, I think, Dad, that she was a product of her time. As I said before, she grew up without a steady family. You know, there could have been some... Mum and I joke about this often. Well, half joke, but that there might have been some mental health issues as well there that you would never pick up on in the 30s, 40s and 50s.
As I was a single person, I used to try and think why this was happening to me. And I sometimes used to think maybe she's putting me on trial to see how I would respond to her being nasty to me, how I would react. Maybe it was just a test. I could never believe my life was like that, because I had not lots of friends, people who, my friends down the road from where we lived. And I used to go down there. I used to talk to people, lots of people about my problems.
Yeah.
And people couldn't believe it. They said, no, Andrew, it's not that bad, surely.
Yeah.
There was my auntie Eileen, who I knew from birth. And she said, come on, son, it's all right. I know your mum's a different, but she's a good person. I said, no, she's good, but it's just...
Yeah. So you were able, even though you didn't have really anything to compare it to, you were able to understand that this wasn't, well, normal, I was going to say, but it wasn't love. Or it was love in the way that I was going to say that when I was born, you often say that you would take me to visit her, and how would she react?
If you were lucky, she opened the door. She would open the door and just walk away into the house and not even say welcome or hello, Eleni, or hello, Andrew, or anything like that. There was no love.
Yeah.
You know, there was one time when it was Mother's Day, I think it was, and your mother turned up with a big bouquet of flowers. She didn't even open the door to her.
Yeah.
The neighbours said, well, she's home. We've seen her. And it was pouring with rain. She'd leave your mother in the rain with flowers in her hands.
And I also remember the story that my late Auntie Dulla likes to say about your wedding day, when Yaya had a fit and Dulla had to slap her.
Yeah. We were legally married, and she wanted to take me home and not go to her simbeteros, her daughter's parents for lunch.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So do you often think that it's a shock that you didn't grow up to be an abusive parent?
Only from what you kids keep telling me. And others say. Again, I don't know what it is, but I just seem to blend into things. I don't see it as... Because I hate to use the word blessed, because I'm not that... I am religious, but not to say I've been blessed. But going into your mother's family, because she's got 4 other brothers. There are 5 children in her family. But I felt that I was sort of like rescued, given a new lease of life going into that family.
And it wasn't like it was the perfect family, but it was a family. You had siblings.
No, they were lovely. There were 4 boys there who I was the eldest brother to them.
Yeah, and they adore you.
They looked up to me, all of them, you know. And it was a loving situation, really was.
Yeah. Well, you know, growing up with an abusive parent can have a knock-on effect on a lot of areas in your life. We never felt that. None of us ever thought that, you know, Dad is in this way or that way because he grew up like this, or because you grew up like that. We weren't really aware. And I think that a lot of the time, because Mum's mum and Dad were very, were in our lives a lot. I mean, I feel that Yaya, Lella, my mum's mum, raised me. I have her name as well. But because we had that Yaya and Bapo, I never felt that we were missing something from your side of the family. Even though it was always, you know, it was never, you didn't have any brothers, you didn't have any sisters, we didn't have any first cousins from your side, but it's sort of like the other side made up for it, and we didn't really care. It wasn't something that we noticed. Especially when we moved to Cyprus and everyone was cousins with everyone and everyone had these massive families. And also the fact that people would say, you know, what's your relation to this area? Why are you here? We're here because my dad liked this area and that's why we're here. So...
you say about family, don't forget you achieved a whole new family when we started our re-relationships with Lissos. which is my dad's village.
Yeah, from Bapu's side of the family.
Because in England, we had no family whatsoever, no cousins, nothing.
Yeah. And I do remember actually the first summers when we moved to Cyprus, we would spend a lot of time in Bafos with the family down there, and I never felt that something was missing ever. We always had.
You adapted very, very well as a child. I always remember you going off to school the first day with your encyclopedias and your dictionaries that translated from Greek to from English to Greek. You know, you and Emilia did very, very well.
Yeah.
American Academy for the first year, and then to normal.
And then we moved to the public school.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you had to create a family motto, a saying maybe, about our family, what would it be?
Makes you sound like the SAS, who dares wins. God knows. I can't think of one.
You're a father of 6. You're a grandfather of how many now?
10 so far.
There's 10 grandchildren. Is this where you saw yourself? Are you in a place where you're happy? I mean, you're
happy.
retiring now. You're pissing off to the mountains in Lissos,
I
in
will never
Bafos.
retire. I will always be active.
Yes, I know. But you a mum now. You're sort of like leaving the family home and you're going to your little...
Well, we set you all up in that nice big piece of land.
Yeah, we are.
You've all come together with your spouses.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and I was going to say, you did get your dream when you said you bought that piece of land.
Yeah, but it was only supposed to be for 3 of you. And then another 3 popped up.
Yeah, another 3 popped up. But where I live right now, on that piece of land that my dad bought when he moved here, also 4 out of my siblings are there. And probably it will be all 6 of us at some point. So you got your wish. It came true. Okay, we've recorded an hour. Is there anything else that you wanted to say? Did I do a good job?
Extremely good.
Are you proud of me?
I'm very impressed. Very impressed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.